Hello everyone and welcome back to the Lazy Kitchen. Today we're making a pineapple pork stew. I managed to say that without tripping over my tongue, so I'm happy. For those of you who are joining us for the first time at the Lazy Kitchen, it's a place for people like me that don't have a lot of time to cook, and sometimes people who don't like to cook or they don't know how to cook, but you still want to make a healthy and affordable meal for your family. We have 3 simple rules in the Lazy Kitchen. Number 1, everyone's favorite, is lazy, and that's defined as food that's made in less than 10 minutes using little to no prep, and the majority of the time we're only going to need 1 cooking utensil. Today we're going to be using an electric multifunction cooker. This happens to be my old-fashioned 6-quart Instapot, but there are a lot of really good brands out there. You just want to have something that allows you to cook at high heat, like a saute function, and then convert that to a slow cook. It's nice if you can have the delay start function, especially nice sometimes for me. I whip things up while I make myself coffee in the morning, and I set it to start cooking at noon, so the recipe is just cooking and nice and warm when I get home. But if you don't have that, this still will work. The second rule of the Lazy Kitchen is the thrifty, in the sense we try to keep the food as affordable as we can reasonably can without compromising nutritional value. I will talk about where I sourced my ingredients and exactly for what cost. And a friend asked me recently what the cost per plate or per serving was, and I would say that on average is going to be about $3, so you can figure that out based on how big of a recipe you make. Last rule, very dear to my heart, is healthy. We define healthy as making a meal that has whole foods ingredient, very little processed foods, if any at all. And we're going to make an all-in-one meal that has all your good source of protein, of complete protein, a good source of carbohydrates. Incidentally, most of you know by now that all the recipes are gluten-free because I have celiac. And very importantly, we want a diversity of vegetables, and we try to have at least 2 different vegetables per recipe. So let's look at the ingredients of our recipe. We're going to use pork. Get the best pork that you can get. There's a lot of good free-range options at some of the natural section of a food store, or whatever you can wing in the budget. So I had 4 pork chops today, actually that came out of the freezer from a few different brands, and so this is going to be a pretty good size portion we're going to make. I would say the pork is going to cost you between $5 and $6 if you shop in a savvy way when things are on sale, or if you shop bulk like I do. We're going to, for the vegetables, we're going to use a little bit of onion to brown things. I use the packed frozen onions. It's just onions, nothing added. A bag is $1.20 at any major grocery store. I'm going to use half of that, so we're going to have about 60 cents worth of onions. We're going to use carrots as well. These are fresh cut carrots. You can use the fresh shredded carrots as well. These were $1.89 for a whole bag. That will go a long way. Pineapple, that's more of a condiment, so I just happen to have some fresh cut pineapple that needs to be used up. It's getting a little bit old and juicy, so it works really well on the recipe. Pineapple is very inexpensive. If you have canned pineapple, that will work as well. You probably need only about half a can. We're not using a lot of it, so it's even though it's a canned ingredient, we can certainly incorporate that. The other vegetable we're going to have is the green beans. I'm not sure I'm going to need the whole bag, but these are like probably between $2 and $2.50, and these are just plain cut green beans. If you have some fresh ones that are already cut in the ends, that will work as well. For the starch, we're going to do something a little bit unusual today. We're going to use white kidney beans or white cannellini beans. The beans are somewhere between a mix between a starch and a protein. It's also got a lot of good fiber. Make sure you get good quality beans that don't have anything added. Read the ingredients. They should basically be your beans, your salt, and your water, and not a lot of preservative or no preservative really. And depending on how much you want starchiness, you can have 1 or 2 cans in this recipe. So I'll see how much I fill up the Instapot as I go. You probably will need a tiny bit of broth. I always have one of those, try to have a good quality broth in my fridge, maybe like a half a cup. And then the optional ingredient, although I encourage you to stretch your wings a little bit and try, is curry. Curry and pineapple go really well together, but if you make it without the curry this time, that's fine. You can always get bold and try that next time. So, okay, I think we're ready to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start my cooker on 30, and we're going to start my accountability clock here. There we go. So first thing we're going to do is put the onions to brown a little bit. One thing I recommend you do is, if your vegetables are very, they often will get very watery after you thaw them, so that you would drain them. It's not going to matter so much in this recipe, so that's probably going to be a little bit of moisture with my onions. As far as the oil, I realized I forgot to mention that you want coconut oil. Works really well anytime you're going to make a sweet and savory recipe. So I'm going to use a little bit of coconut oil that I happen to have bulk in an old yogurt container. Don't ask me why. That's how I store things. Okay. And we're gonna let these guys brown a little bit. And while this is happening, I'm going to take the meat and just take it out of its package. I would recommend, one portion for an adult is probably going to be, a medium-sized chop. If you want to emphasize non-meat protein, you just do smaller chops, or half a chop per person, and you add more legumes in your white beans. Make sure you wash your hands before you do this, obviously. Okay, and since this needs another minute, I'm already going to get my beans ready. What you want to do with the canned beans is you want to usually drain the juice a little bit. Most good quality beans will have cans that are BPA free, so it's not as crucial. But if my wonderful videographer can follow me to the sink, I'll show you how I do that. So I will drain, add a little bit of water, shake it, drain, and do that one more time. Okay. All right, we're starting to have some action. So I'm going to put my meat to get it to get just a tiny bit of brown. Here. And then all we've got left to do is add a vegetable. This is definitely a recipe you can make very vegetable rich. Get to your carrots, that is. And I'm going to use the magic ingredient, which is the curry. Now's a good time. And depending on how much you like curry, obviously you can tell by what you see that I like curry a lot. You can put a fair amount of it. And I once had a spatula. Oh, there it is. Brown my meat with the curry. This is also a good time to add the amount of salt that you think you'll want. Definitely, these were plain meat, so it does need some salt. pineapple. I think the only other recipe that most Americans have seen that have pineapple and curry together is usually some sort of pizza. So we're trying to raise the bar in terms of healthy options and still keep a little bit of that theme. Very good. Yeah, I like it. Pineapple's good for you when it's fresh. So you get 2 vegetables and you get a serving of fruit. That's a whole new definition of a all-in-one meal. Very good. And so now I'm going to add veggies. Wow, there's a lot of carrots in that bag. Vegetables are good for you. Remember, if you have frozen vegetables that get really watery when you thaw them, just drain it. I would squeeze the extra juice over my fetching bowl here. Like beans. I like the small ones, but any good quality green bean that doesn't have too much freezer burn is going to do the trick for you. Good. And last but not least, we're going to add our beans. And beans, if you haven't used them a lot, this one can. Go easy on them until you know how you digest them. Not everyone has tolerance for a lot of beans, and so don't turn yourself into a big gut ache by overdoing that on the first time. But beans are nice for a variety of reasons. Not the least of which that these days with rising food prices, that's one way you can stretch your meat protein cost, your meat protein budget. So. And then I'm going to add a little bit of broth. So maybe it's probably going to be about a half a cup. I'm not a scientist when it comes to cooking. So you'll see that there's some nice broth in the bottom, so the recipe should stay nice and moist. If you happen to be home during the day and this is cooking, feel free to come in and give it a stir about halfway through. I think this probably will need a good 4 or 5 hours, I would say, on the low setting of your cooker. So the last thing I'm going to do is, so we're about 7 minutes and a half, to give us a couple more minutes to just throw some things back in the fridge. You're going to shut off on your particular utensil, you're going to shut off the saute function, and you're going to start your slow cook function. I'm going to give it maybe 5.5 hours. And if you're interested in having a delay start, let's say you wanted to start in 5 hours, you would push this button and you'd be ready to go. Depending on which brand of electric multifunction cooker you have, I'm not sure what lid you have, but if you have a sealing lid, this is really what you want to use. Otherwise, it's difficult for some of the cookers to get the temperature high enough to fully cook things through. This will also keep it nice and moist. So I'm going to, this thing gets a little temperamental, voila. It's going to start cooking in 5 hours, and then 5 hours later I'll have a hot meal ready to go. I hope you've enjoyed cooking a new meal. I hope you'll enjoy it with your family. 8 minutes, 40 seconds. Hope to see you soon.